everybody. This is Lady Shel, and I'm here with founder Laerun, and we're here to do our latest episode of Fantasy Grounds Unity A through Z. And this week, we're going to be talking about the banner on the right for images and maps. And I'm going to throw it back to Laerun, and you can tell me how you're doing today.
I am doing well. Thanks for the intro. I am founder Laerun. Today we're going to cover images and maps more on a basic level. If you're used to classic, that's basically how we're going to present it, as if we were using classic. But really, you don't have to have the complexity that it offers unless you want it. So we're going to cover that, and we're going to go through all the little things that all the little buttons do, and also going to show you how to set up a couple things and give you an idea of where your assets are and those sort of things. So without further ado, Lady Shel, let's get into this. What do you say?
You always ask me something when I'm typing.
Oh
I was
gosh.
typing something to the chat. Yeah, let's get into it.
All right, so first things first, I opened up a banner called Maps. Now, depending on the theme and the rule set, it's going to say Maps and Images, or it's going to say Images, or it might say Pictures or Photos, but nonetheless, this is pointing to that type of asset. Now, the Maps and Images area has some functionality that everyone should learn, and it is kind of, some of this is shared amongst the other data types, but you have this group here. So what this does is it allows you to filter between different books that you have loaded in your library. So what I'm saying is I have Lost Mine of Phandelver and the Player's Handbook. So if you only want to see the content from either of those, you use the drop down on group, and it's this little black triangular thing which looks like a down arrow. And once you click on it, you'll get the different groups. So I have a folder called, or a group called Fantasy Grounds A to Z. I had some that come from the modules. I had another one called Snowy Maps. I must have used this for one of my other episodes. And then you have the ones that come from the modules. So some of these groups were created. Some of them are come over from the actual module. So it really depends on the content that you have loaded or what you've imported. So that's what these filters are for. But if you use them, it keeps you from looking at all the other things you don't need to see at the moment. So it's kind of a way to filter out what kind of stuff you want. But if you want everything back again, like to see everything in a glance, just click on all, and everything here will be showing that's loaded in your library. So on top here, we have 3 buttons. The store button basically is pretty self-explanatory. It just goes to the Fantasy Grounds store, right to there. So if you need to buy something, it's right there. It's convenient. You have 2 different import tools. And basically the import files, when you click on this, and that's this one here on the top left, it actually opens up a dialog box so you can navigate anywhere on your computer, and it allows you to pull in random files and create assets for you. So if you have a bunch of maps floating around your hard drive and you need to bring them into Fantasy Grounds, the import files will allow you to do so, and you don't have to have any specific area. You just navigate to where maybe your downloads folder or where they're stored. The other button here is similar, except for it counts and relies on the fact that you've already gathered up all the photos you need and you're ready to import them. So what that does is it allows for you to easily get tons of maps or a bunch of assets pulled in at once. So when it says create from campaign assets, that means that on the outside of Fantasy Grounds, you have already put in all your images, and now you want them to be in Fantasy Grounds and not just in the assets folder. So if I go to the assets folder, there are basically machine, but we are coming back up. So we will be back here in about a minute. We are covering maps right now, more on the basic level. So once Fantasy Grounds is up, we will start to get back into that. And Lady Shel will be back too. We had a malfunction on my computer. It just crashed on me, so I'm not sure why, but I think I had a USB device that was halfway plugged in or something to cause it to short. I don't know. But anyhow, we're coming back. We're just waiting for Unity to come back up. So we left off where we were describing the frame around the data type for maps and images. So we'll kind of touch back on it again. And then at a later point, I'll tie the videos together if I need to. So while this is loading up, I hope you guys had a good holiday season. I got to spend time with my family, so that was good. Also, we're doing a lot of cool things in Fantasy Grounds College right now. We have a year of rule sets, so we're taking one rule set every month or almost every month and featuring them. So this month is Traveler. Next month is going to be Pathfinder. So we'll see how, or not Pathfinder, but second edition D&D. So we'll see what the good word gives us. But let me get back in here with Lady Shel. So I'll be with you in a moment. All right. Are you here, Lady Shel? Everybody on board here? Testing, testing, Lady Shel. Are you here?
Yep.
All right. Finally back up in live. Sorry, folks. Let's see. So I was going over the frame on the maps and images area. So I'm going to pull that back up. And basically I was explaining that when you're in your assets folder, you have two different places that you would store your images. So first of all, when you're in your assets folder, make sure that you're on images. And then you'll notice usually you'll have a data camp folder, which is basically a shared folder with all your images, tokens, and maps at a higher level. So you'll have access to that through Fantasy Grounds. And then the data level is when you actually have a campaign folder and you just have stuff specifically for that. So that's why I wanted you to make sure you understood that. The other thing is if you pull in assets, you can actually open up the folder button on the bottom of the assets window and you'll have full access to it. You can drag things, copy and paste them into the data folder or your campaign folder. And then you hit the refresh button and it will pick up any changes that you've made. So if you add new files, it'll pull that in so you have previews of them. On the right-hand side here on the assets window, next to all these little bags, is you have an arrow And when you click on that arrow, it actually takes you to your other parts of your collection. So if you think you look a little bare or you can't find anything, look at that little arrow it's sitting here on the right-hand side of the screen here. A lot of people don't know that's there, even though they improved the visibility of it. So when you click on that, it advances you to the next window with the next group of, of your, I think it's like 50 or so. So that's how you navigate through here. Also, you have a tokens folder or a assets window. You have portraits, which is just, for your photos for your characters. And then your images is for all of your maps and handouts and such. And then there's also an all button we don't normally use. And one thing that Lady Shel had brought up that we should mention is that, let's see. Yep, so we can change the view to a list view instead of a grid. So that's kind of handy. So if you have a hard time seeing or you get kind of confused, I think this is a better view because the titles show up better. What do you think, Shel?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
It's easier to read text than to look at the little bags and then try and see what it says underneath the bag.
correct. So what we're going to do is give you a couple examples of maps that we can either, it'll already be included in the module, or we'll have something that we brought in ourselves. So after you bring up the PC banner, you might already have some things in here. You have this group up here, which we talked about before we had the crash, and you click this down arrow here, and I'm going to pick the maps that are in Lost Mine of Phandelver. So there's maps, D&D, Lost Mine of Phandelver. So these were already here. I didn't have to do anything. They were already in this folder. So when you click on any one of these, so such as, let's say, the Cragmaw Hideout, there's a DM one map and a player's map. So when you click on it, you actually are getting the map with all the pins that are correlated to the story. And then you have line of sight already built in if you're using Unity. If you're using Classic, you won't have line of sight. But anyways, this has a mask on it because I haven't turned on or off the play mode. So right now, if I turn that off, it disables the line of sight. Turn that back on, it actually is going to turn the built-in line of sight that's already there. And as you can see, as I mouse over the map, different things will pop up that I can interact with, especially as a player. So these are just different ways to show you how this stuff is accessed. Now, when you click on this layer here, this is the map layer that's down below. So this layer here is the map itself. So you could put other layers on there depending on what you need. But for this case, we're just going to show you this. And if you want to use the maps like the old way for Classic, what you can do is come to the play mode, which is the dice up here on the top right corner in here. And you click the eyeball and that turns off the line of sight. However, you can still enable a mask, and then you hit the mask, and then you hit this plus button, and it will do this, and you'll still be able to see it because you're the game master in this view. But then you would trace you'd unreveal what areas you wanted your players to see, just like you do in Classic. So you don't have quite the fancy setup as you would if you have a line of sight. But this is how it would look in Classic, pretty much. So this is a map that comes with Lost Mine of Phandelver. It's already completed. I have some other assets that I imported for this particular campaign. And I have all the basic ones here. But if I didn't want to use what they provide, you can always bring in your own or make your own. So I'm going to go down this list. I'm going to pull in a map that is from the module, and then one that was third party. So I have a folder called Lost Mine Add-in Map, and these are from Chris from Game Tile Warehouse. And let's see, I don't know if these are available, so just don't quote me on that. But you have this red brand and hideout player map. So he's made his own version of it. There's map 1 and map 2. So if I bring this up, yeah, so here's his version of it. That's the player side. Let me shrink this down. So as you can see, it's quite a bit larger. I mean, you could stretch this other one too. Let's see. So if I put that here and I shrink it a little, and then I'm going to right click on the map and click on layers, and you can enable a mask like you used to. You can set a grid. This one will need a grid. So you can set it here, or you can go into the settings of the map and do it. I'm just going to set it here, just like the old way with the old classic. So if I click on here, I can actually set this just like we did before in the old method and drag this out until you get a square that's really close to the dimensions you want. And then once you're done, I can actually unlock the map, make some fine adjustments. So there's a little padlock up here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so this is off a little. So what I'm going to do is go into the actual image layer here, and then I'm going to set or look at what the tile is and set it on that. So here we have some of this stuff makes sense, but some of it doesn't. So I think honestly that the map itself or the grid is a little bit big. Yeah, that's 306. So I'm going to try 300. Now, mind you, that's a big map. Yeah, see, this is already looking better. And then I have the navigation arrows up here. So I just changed the ratio from 3.0 something to closer to what it is supposed to be. And then you can nudge the file with these arrows. And that should get you where you want. So that's how you add a grid to the map. You can either do it from here, or you can come into the software, take up a grid and add it from there. Or like I did, I right clicked on the map and I got into a different menu that allowed me to put a grid on it, just like the old days or the older
I like
software.
the mouse version
Yeah.
because
Uh,
I come from classic and I like doing it that way.
okay, so then we have the view is basically a way to change how much it's zoomed in. So if you have the map and it's sitting out like this and you have it, kind of expanded out, that's the entire map. And you can use this navigation arrow on the bottom right corner. And it's kind of wild, but you can bring the map in and center it that way, but it's really hard. Or you can just click this little black circle with it, or a triangle with the dots, and that brings this zoom to fit banner, which is right here on the far left. If you click that, it'll actually recenter the map. So if you get lost or you're struggling, you can use that to help you recenter. And see, now some of these are still off a little bit, but I can adjust for that. Yep. So they're looking a little bit better. All right. So that's basically how you would put the grid on it. We're not going to do line of sight or anything like that. The only thing you might want to do is use the mask. So if you click on the mask and you click the plus button, that adds a layer of the masking. And then you would just reveal the parts that you want. So this is just kind of using it the old school way. And then right click on the map, hit layers, and you can click on any of these tools here. Let's see, if I zoom in, I can also change the grid type, so it's kind of this grayish color. So I want to be able to pop or stand out more, so I can change the color of the lines, like a light blue, turn down the alpha channel, which is transparency, and it'll be there, but it won't be as visible, the actual lines, which is good because the lines are kind of broken anyways. So now the next thing we're going to do is lock this up, and you basically have your own map that you can use, and you can also do unmasking like you did with the older system. Now, in comparison, if you look at these two maps, I mean, they're the same map. It's just that this has all the pins on it and such. This one doesn't. So if you wanted to use this map, technically you can drag these pins over to the new map. You have to unlock them, of course. And just remember which one you're dragging over. And then you would just take and drag this on the map. So each one of these pins, if you wanted to transfer them over, that's how you would do that. That way it keeps the story flowing, and it's kind of with the module. Let's see. So we basically went over how the map is to be loaded, what type of assets you might want, and then I showed you some images of some pretty nice alternative looking maps. For instance, Chris made a Thunder Tree area. Here's the Town Master's Hall. So it looks like a church almost. But anyways, this is the Town Master's Hall. So you can see this one doesn't have a grid. It's not set up with one. You can probably use the door or something to give you a rough idea. And there's a guy sitting there in front of his fireplace. So let me go to the grid mode. And this time I'm going to change this to 100. Because I know yes, even that's too small. So this is back to the scale of 300, which kind of makes sense. And then here's a staircase that goes up. And then I can nudge the tiles here. All right, so that's that. Then I'm going to change the color. I want to go with like a light green or yellowish. Then turn down the alpha, which is the transparency. Now it's not too bright and it's still there. And then if I wanted to use the old masking, I click on the mask again, and you have to hit this enable mask here. And there's the regular mask. And you'd have to unmask this manually to where their start entry point is. So if your players are playing on this map, you're going to reveal an area that they can start. So maybe they'll start there. So just keep in mind that you have full control over Fantasy Grounds. You just have to practice with it and understand how it works. So we're just kind of showing you what you can do with the maps on a small scale. So you get people to make them for you, or you can build them yourself. If you're not subscribed to Fantasy Grounds art packs, I suggest it if you like that kind of thing. You get a bunch of tiles, you get extensions for like themes, and you get a little bit more priority on support and that kind of thing, it seems like. So when you're trying to, customize your game, it's good to have all these custom assets, even though you don't use them all the time, to make your session better. So, Lady Shel, did you have anything you want to say?
I can't think of anything right now. I think you covered everything.
So we haven't missed anything. Now, basically, I want you guys to know that we weren't doing line of sight and effects and all that. We were mainly just doing the old school mapping that you had available to you when you were, before Unity came out, basically. Another thing I have is this Phandalin Road. It's really not anything that's exactly in the module, but it's a point where you can have an ambush or some sort of skirmish. So again, you'd put a grid on it, and then you'd put your players on it, and then you'd put your encounter, and it would work out that way. So this is just different ideas that Chris had for the stream. So if there's no other questions out there, Shel, I think we'll call it a day.
Hey, I asked if there's any questions and no one has responded. So
Okay.
I guess everyone is understanding everything. We'd
Okay.
like to thank you for joining us, and we apologize again for the technical difficulties. And we're glad that you came back. And thanks for coming. And we'll see you in 2 weeks, where we will be discussing which tab are we going to be discussing next, Laerun?
I imagine that it's going to be probably the story tab.
Ah, okay. Yeah, there's a lot going on with story. Well, at least when you're, adding, content to your game and whatever's going to be going on. So,
Right.
yeah, no questions.
All
So,
right.
have a good rest of your weekend, whatever is left of it. And we will see you again in a couple weeks.
Bye bye.